Seoul watches everybody. Seoul did not sleep. It glittered. It watched. It watched from glass towers and hotel windows, from traffic cameras and black sedans, from elevator mirrors and polished restaurant doors. And Sandra Williams had learned to watch it back. She was 33 years old, tall, black, American, and in Seoul on an 11-month bilingual transport contract that paid better than anything she could find back home in Chicago. 11 months. That was the plan. If you've ever wondered what happens when destiny interrupts a perfectly planned life, smash that subscribe button and stay till the end, because this story will wreck you in the best way. 11 months to clear enough of her mother's medical debt to breathe. 11 months of night routes, airport pickups, foreign executives, private hotel entrances, and clients who either ignored her or underestimated her. Both were useful. Sandra preferred being underestimated. It gave people less reason to manage themselves around her. It let them speak freely, and when people spoke freely, they revealed the truth. She had come to Seoul with 3 suitcases, 2 phones, 1 worn Korean grammar notebook, and no room for complications. Her apartment was small, but clean. Her bed faced the door. Her shoes stayed lined up near the exit. Her passport was never more than 6 steps away. Her mother teased her about it during video calls. "Sandra, baby," her mother would say from her hospital bed in Chicago, voice tired but still warm. "You walk into every room like you're planning your escape." Sandra would smile and say, "Because I am." Her mother would laugh, then cough, then pretend she was fine. That was the part Sandra hated most, not the bills, not the distance, not the long hours. The pretending. Her mother pretending the pain was smaller than it was. Sandra pretending she was not afraid. Everyone pretending time was not money when illness had already turned it into a countdown. So Sandra drove. She drove through Seoul in rain, snow, fog, and midnight traffic. She drove executives who never said thank you. She drove investors who spoke about women as if drivers were furniture. She drove celebrities who cried quietly behind sunglasses. And she remembered everything. Traffic patterns, security gaps, hotel back entrances, which bridges clogged after rain, which tunnels gave no room to escape, which clients lied when they gave a destination. Sandra Williams was not just a driver. She was a woman who survived by noticing first. There had been Chicago. Before luxury sedans, there had been a grocery bag split open in an apartment stairwell. Sandra was 16 the first time she met Mrs. Park. The old woman lived 2 doors down from Sandra and her mother. She was small, sharp-eyed, and terrifying in the way only lonely elders could be. Her knees were bad, but her pride was worse. When Sandra saw the spilled groceries, she bent down to help. Mrs. Park slapped her hand away. "I can do it." Sandra stared at her. "Ma'am, your eggs are rolling down the stairs." Mrs. Park narrowed her eyes. "You talk too much." That was how the friendship began. Not sweetly, not softly. With eggs. After that, Sandra carried Mrs. Park's groceries every Thursday. Mrs. Park repaid her with food she claimed was not a gift, though she always made too much: kimchi stew, rice, japchae, little containers of side dishes stacked like treasure. Then one night, Sandra heard Mrs. Park speaking Korean to herself while watching an old drama. The language moved like music with sharp edges. Sandra asked one question. "What does that mean?" Mrs. Park looked offended. "You want learn?" "Maybe." "Then sit properly." That was the beginning of 10 years of correction. Mrs. Park corrected Sandra's vowels like they were crimes. She corrected honorifics like they were moral failures. She made Sandra repeat sentences until her mouth hurt and her pride surrendered. "No," Mrs. Park would snap, tapping the table. Again, respectfully. "Your tongue is lazy. My tongue is tired. Then wake it up." So Sandra woke it up. She learned greetings, then grammar, then business Korean, then insults, then apologies, then the kind of layered politeness people used when they wanted to cut someone without raising their voice. Mrs. Park taught her more than words. She taught her how language held power. "Listen," Mrs. Park once said, stirring soup with one hand and pointing a spoon at Sandra with the other. "Language is a room. If you learn it well enough, people cannot lock you outside." Sandra never forgot that. By the time Mrs. Park died, Sandra could read her old letters, watch her dramas without subtitles, and understand the prayers whispered at her memorial. She had promised herself she would go to Korea one day, not as a tourist, not as a novelty, as someone who could enter the room. But when Sandra finally arrived in Seoul, she discovered something Mrs. Park had not warned her about. Speaking the language did not always mean the room wanted you inside. Sandra's supervisor, Mr. Han, called her into his office on a rainy Thursday evening. That alone told her something was wrong. Mr. Han did not call drivers into his office unless a client had complained, a route had changed, or trouble had become expensive. He sat behind his desk with his hands folded too tightly. "Sandra," he said, "tonight you have a private client." "I have private clients most nights. This one is different." She waited. Mr. Han lowered his voice. "Lee Chae-woo." The name changed the room. Sandra had heard it before. Not from official briefings, never from company training. But drivers talked. Hotel staff talked. Security teams talked. People who carried luggage and opened doors always knew more than powerful men wanted them to know. Lee Chae-woo owned shipping companies, hotel shares, entertainment properties, restaurants, private clubs, and enough political favors to make doors open before he touched them. That was the clean version. The dirty version was simpler. He was feared. Not loud feared, not movie feared, real feared. The kind that made grown men lower their voices. Mr. Han watched Sandra carefully. "You will pick him up from the Soryeon Hotel, drive to Cheongdam, wait. Then take him to his residence in Hanamdong. Passenger count? Mr. Lee and one guest. Security? 2 vehicles behind you. Special instructions? Do not initiate conversation. Do not ask questions. Do not react." Sandra almost smiled. "That's standard." Mr. Han looked tired. "Some people are not clients, Sandra. They are weather." She understood. You did not argue with weather. You adjusted your route. That night, Sandra arrived 12 minutes early. She checked the black Genesis G90 herself. Tires, fuel, interior, umbrella, water, route, backup route, offline maps, traffic reports, emergency exit points, security car positions. She prepared as if something would go wrong, because eventually, something always did. At 8:04 p.m., Lee Chae-woo emerged from the hotel. Sandra saw him first through the rain. He was not dramatic. That made him worse. A man like Lee Chae-woo did not need theatrical danger. He wore power with restraint. Charcoal overcoat, black hair brushed back, clean jaw, calm mouth, eyes that did not look around because they already knew where everything was. Beside him walked Seo Min-ji. Beautiful, expensive, sharp, the kind of woman who had never had to ask whether a room was looking at her. She slid into the back seat first, bringing perfume and entitlement with her. Lee entered after, and the air in the car changed. Pressure. That was the only word Sandra had for it. Some people had presence. Lee Chae-woo had pressure. Sandra met his eyes briefly in the rear-view mirror. "Good evening," she said in English. Destination confirmed. Cheongdam Avenue, then Hanamdong residence. Lee's gaze held hers for 1 second longer than necessary. Yes, his English was smooth. Min-ji glanced at Sandra's reflection and looked away as if the mirror had shown her something unimportant. Sandra pulled into traffic. For 21 minutes, no one spoke to her. That suited her. Lee made one phone call in Korean. His voice was low, controlled, and dangerous in the way quiet men could be. There was a shipment delay. A director had become careless. A signature had appeared where it should not have. Sandra understood every word. Her face revealed nothing. Silence was useful, especially around men who noticed too much. When they arrived in Cheongdam, Lee stepped out for a private meeting. Minji remained in the car. The door closed. Rain whispered against the roof. Sandra sat facing forward, hands relaxed, eyes on the street. For almost a minute, Minji said nothing. Then, in Korean, she murmured, 요즘은 아무나 고용하나 봐. These days, they hire just anyone. Sandra did not move. Minji's reflection shifted in the mirror. 미국에서 왔다고 했나? 운전이나 제대로 하면 다행이지. She's from America, right? We'll be lucky if she can even drive properly. Sandra watched a taxi cut too close at the intersection. She breathed once, said nothing. Minji leaned back, amused by her own cruelty. 검은 여자가 서울 길을 어떻게 알아? 민호 씨도 참 이상해. How would a black woman know Seoul roads? Chae-woo is strange for this. That almost made Sandra laugh. Not because it was funny, because it was lazy. She had heard better insults in Chicago traffic from men in pickup trucks with expired tags. Still, she stayed quiet. Silence did not always mean surrender. Sometimes silence was evidence collection. When Lee returned 43 minutes later, Sandra already knew 3 things. Minji was insecure. Minji liked to perform sweetness when powerful men were present, and Minji was not nearly as careful as she thought she was. Lee entered the car with 2 guards behind him. Minji's whole face changed instantly, softening into polished affection. "Minoya," she said, using a familiarity that made one of the guards blink. "We should go through Apgujeong. It's prettier at night." Lee looked at his phone. "Traffic?" Sandra checked both devices, but before she could answer, Minji waved one manicured hand toward the windshield. "Driver, turn right at the next intersection." Sandra continued straight. Minji's head snapped toward the front. "I said turn right." Sandra kept her voice calm. "That route is blocked." Minji's mouth tightened. Lee's eyes lifted. Sandra continued in English. "There was a collision near Dosondero 12 minutes ago. Estimated delay is 32 minutes. I'm taking the river road." Minji gave a small, disbelieving laugh. Then she said in Korean, sharp enough to slice the air, 말을 못 알아듣나? 오른쪽으로 돌라고 했잖아. Does she not understand? I said turn right. The traffic light turned green. Sandra let the car roll forward. Then she answered in Korean. Clear? Formal? Perfect. 알아들었습니다. 하지만 오른쪽으로 가시면 30분 이상 지체됩니다. 그래서 직진하겠습니다. I understood. But if we turn right, we'll be delayed more than 30 minutes, so I will continue straight. The car went silent. Not quiet. Silent. The kind of silence that arrives when every person in a room understands something irreversible has just happened. Minji froze. Lee did not move. Sandra kept both hands on the wheel. A bus shifted too close. She adjusted smoothly, passed without drama, and continued down the rain-slick street. Only then did Minji speak. "You speak Korean?" Sandra answered in English. "Yes, ma'am." "How much?" Sandra glanced at her through the mirror. "Enough." Minji's face colored. Lee's eyes stayed on Sandra. Not amused. Not embarrassed. Interested. Dangerously interested. Minji recovered with a brittle laugh. "Well, you should have said something." Sandra's voice remained even. "You did not ask." The silence sharpened. Minji turned toward Lee, looking for support. "Minoya, your driver is rude." Lee's answer came quietly. "No." One word. No explanation. No softness. Just no. Minji stiffened. Lee looked at Sandra in the mirror. "What is your name?" The question seemed simple, but Sandra felt the weight of it. "Sandra Williams." "How long have you been in Seoul, Miss Williams?" 3 months. "And you already know the river road is faster?" "I knew before I arrived." Minji scoffed. Sandra ignored her. Lee's gaze sharpened. "How?" "I study what keeps clients alive and on time." The words left her mouth before she could soften them. Alive. Not comfortable. Not satisfied. Alive. Lee noticed. Of course he noticed. Men like him noticed everything. He leaned back slowly. "Alive," he repeated. Sandra kept driving. "Yes, sir." The next morning, Sandra found tea on her driver's seat. Not company tea, not hotel tea. A small paper bag from a market in Mapo. Inside were 3 packets of expensive yuja cha, honey citron tea, the kind Mrs. Park used to drink when her throat hurt. There was no note. Sandra stared at the bag for 10 seconds. Then she looked around the garage. No one nearby. Mr. Han approached, saw the bag, and stopped walking. His expression changed in a way Sandra did not like. "Sandra, did you put this here?" "No." "Do you know who did?" He looked away too quickly. "Maybe a client appreciated your service. Clients usually use cash. Some clients use symbols. I don't need symbols. With certain people," Mr. Han said carefully, "refusing is also a symbol." Sandra picked up the bag and placed it in her tote. "And accepting? Also a symbol. That's inconvenient." "Yes," Mr. Han said. "Power usually is." By noon, her schedule changed. Lee Chae-woo requested Sandra by name. Not Han Global, not any bilingual driver. Her. For the next week, she drove him every evening. Sometimes he was alone. Sometimes he had guards. Sometimes Minji rode with him. Silent now, her Korean suddenly careful. Sandra did not gloat. Gloating was wasteful. But she noticed. Lee did not make small talk. His questions came like knives wrapped in silk. "You know this district?" "Yes." "Without GPS?" "Yes." "You drive differently near Itaewon. More pedestrians step into traffic there after midnight. You avoid tunnels when security is light. Tunnels reduce options. You notice that?" "Yes." "You notice a lot, Miss Williams." "So do you, Mr. Lee." One of the guards in the back seat went very still. But Lee only looked at her reflection. Careful. "I usually am." For the first time, Sandra saw the faintest movement at the corner of his mouth. Not a smile, the possibility of one, and that was dangerous. Because Sandra did not need to be interesting to Lee Chae-woo. Interesting was how complications began. One night, after a meeting near Jongno, Lee entered the back seat alone and said, "Drive." Sandra waited. "To where?" "Forward." She did not move. Lee's eyes lifted to the mirror. "You require a destination." "Yes." "Most drivers do not ask. Most drivers are not responsible for you if something happens." The car remained still. "Are you responsible for me, Miss Williams?" "I am responsible for the vehicle, the route, and all passengers inside it." "Even me?" "Especially you." Something flickered across his face. Not surprise. Recognition. As if he had not heard anyone speak of his life as a responsibility in a very long time. He gave her an address. A small tea house near Mappa. When they arrived, Sandra parked outside and prepared to wait. Lee opened his door, paused, and said, "Come inside." "No, thank you." It was not a request. Sandra looked at him in the mirror. "Then I respectfully decline the command." The guard outside looked as if she had slapped a king. Lee turned slowly. "Do you know who I am?" "Yes." "Yet you decline?" "Yes." "Why?" "I'm on duty." "I can end your duty." "You can, but until then, I'm working." A silence passed between them. And Lee Chae-woo laughed. Once. Quiet. Real. It startled the guard. It seemed to startle Lee too. "Miss Williams," he said, "you have a dangerous understanding of boundaries." "No," Sandra said. "I have a necessary one." His expression changed. "Who taught you that?" "Life." He studied her for another moment. Then he closed the door. "Wait here." "Yes, sir." He disappeared into the tea house. Only after he was gone did Sandra exhale. Her phone buzzed. A message from her mother. "How's Korea today, baby?" Sandra looked at the rain, the guard, the tea house door, and the Mappo tea still inside her work tote. She typed back. Complicated. Seo Minji was not used to being embarrassed. She was used to rooms adjusting for her, doors opening, men forgiving, women envying, Lee tolerating. But Sandra Williams had made her look small in front of Lee Chae-woo, and Minji did not forgive small. 3 nights after the correction, Sandra arrived at the underground entrance of a private restaurant in Hanam-dong. Lee had dinner with foreign investors. Sandra was scheduled to wait nearby. Minji arrived separately. That was unusual. She stepped from a silver Mercedes wearing black silk and an expression too sharp to be beautiful. Sandra stood beside the Genesis, hands folded, posture professional. Minji approached slowly. "You think you're clever," she said in English. Sandra looked at her calmly. "I think I'm working." "You embarrassed me." "No. I answered you." "You should have stayed quiet." "I did. For a while." Minji's eyes narrowed. "You're very arrogant for someone who opens doors." Sandra tilted her head slightly. "I don't open doors. Security does." Mindy's smile disappeared. "You think because Chae-woo noticed you, you matter?" Sandra did not answer. Mindy stepped closer. "He notices unusual things, that's all. A Black American woman speaking Korean? How entertaining." Sandra's face remained still. "I am not here to entertain anyone." "No," Minji said softly. "You're here because you need money." That landed closer. Sandra's eyes cooled. Minji saw it and smiled. "There it is." Sandra said nothing. "You have family debt, don't you?" "Medical, I heard." For the first time, Sandra felt anger move through her body like heat under ice. But her voice stayed calm. "You've been asking about me. You are not difficult to investigate." "No," Sandra said. "Just rude to." Minji's mouth tightened. "You should remember your place. My place is behind the wheel." For now. The restaurant door opened. Lee stepped out. Minji immediately turned, softening her face. "Mino-ya," she said warmly. "I was just talking to Sandra." Lee looked from Minji to Sandra. Sandra's expression gave him nothing. That was answer enough. "What about?" he asked. Minji laughed delicately. "Nothing serious." Lee looked at Sandra. "Miss Williams?" Sandra could have protected the contract. She could have smiled. She could have lied. Instead, she said, "Miss Seo was reminding me of my place." The air changed. Lee's eyes moved to Minji. "Was she?" Minji's smile twitched. "She misunderstood me." Sandra opened the rear door. Lee did not get in. He said to Minji, "Apologize." Minji blinked. "What?" "Apologize." "In front of the staff?" "In front of the person you insulted." Minji stared at him. For the first time, Sandra saw fear touch her face. Not much. Enough. Minji looked at Sandra with hatred dressed as humiliation. "I'm sorry if you misunderstood." Lee's voice lowered. That was not an apology. Minji swallowed. "I'm sorry," she said stiffly, "for speaking disrespectfully." Sandra nodded once. Accepted. Minji reached for the car door. Lee stopped her. "You are not riding with me tonight." Her hand froze. "Mino-ya, I told you not to use that name." The guard stepped forward. Minji's face went pale. "You're choosing a driver over me." Lee's expression did not change. "No, I am correcting a mistake." Then he entered the car and closed the door. Sandra got behind the wheel. For the first time since arriving in Seoul, her hands were not completely steady. Lee noticed. He always noticed. "Are you afraid?" he asked quietly. "No." "Angry?" "Yes." "At her?" "At myself." "Why?" "Because she found something true and used it." Lee looked at her in the mirror. "Your mother." Sandra said nothing. Lee's voice softened by 1 degree. "She is ill?" "That is not part of my employment file." "No. Then it is not part of this conversation." A long silence followed. Then Lee said, "Understood." That one word almost undid her, because powerful men did not usually accept boundaries the first time. They pushed, they tested, they smiled and pushed again. Lee Chae-woo did not. He simply looked out the window, at Seoul sliding past in wet silver streaks. And Sandra realized something dangerous. She respected that. The tea kept appearing, never daily, never predictable. Once after a long night. Once after Sandra rerouted around a protest, before security even noticed. Once after she drove Lee away from a private building seconds before police arrived, not because he told her to, but because she saw 3 plain sedans block the far exit and knew trouble before anyone named it. Each time, the tea came from Mapo. Each time, no note. Each time, Sandra told herself it meant nothing. Then her mother called at 1:17 in the morning. Sandra was parked outside a private club in Gangnam. The name Mama lit her phone screen. Sandra knew before she answered. Mothers did not call at 1:17 a.m. unless pain had won. "Sandra, baby," her mother whispered. Sandra sat straighter. "Mama, I'm okay." That meant she was not. "What happened?" "Just some chest pressure. Your auntie took me in." "To the hospital?" "Don't panic." "I'm already panicking." Her mother tried to laugh. It turned into a cough. Sandra closed her eyes. "Mama, tell me exactly what the doctor said." "I don't want you worrying all the way over there." "That is not an answer." Silence. Then her mother's voice got smaller. "They want to run more tests. They said the surgery might need to move up." The world narrowed. "How much?" "Sandra, how much?" Her mother was quiet too long. Sandra understood. More than they had. More than Sandra had earned. Maybe more than 11 months could fix. She pressed her fist to her mouth. At that moment, the club doors opened. Lee emerged with 2 guards and stopped immediately. His eyes found her through the windshield. She looked away, too late. He saw. Of course he saw. She ended the call before he reached the car. "Call me after the doctor comes back," Sandra said. "No, Mama. Promise me." Her mother whispered, "I promise." Sandra hung up and unlocked the doors. Lee entered. No one spoke. She drove. After 10 minutes, he said, "Pull over." "Sir?" "Pull over." Sandra guided the car into a quiet side street beneath winter bare trees. The security car stopped behind them. Lee spoke briefly into his phone. The guards remained outside. Then he looked at her reflection. "Take 10 minutes. I'm fine." "No," Lee said. "You are functional. That is different." Sandra hated how accurate that was. "I'm on duty. Your passenger is giving permission." "I don't need permission to feel things." "No," he said. "You need permission to stop pretending you do not." The words struck too cleanly. Sandra stared through the windshield. Rain gathered on the glass, distorting the city. Lee did not move closer. He did not touch her. He did not ask for details again. He did not offer money. That would have been easier to reject. Instead, he gave her silence. Not the kind that erased her, the kind that made room. Sandra inhaled once. It shook. "My mother needs surgery," she said finally. Lee listened. "I came here because the contract pays enough to clear the first round of debt. I thought I had time." "You do not?" "I don't know." "Do you need to return to Chicago?" "I need money. Returning without it does not help her." Lee's jaw tightened. "How much?" Sandra laughed once. "No." "I asked, and I said no." He leaned back slightly. She turned enough to look at him directly. "I know what men like you do with money." His eyes darkened. "Men like me?" "Yes, explain. You give it, and it becomes a rope, a favor, a debt." Quiet ownership dressed as kindness. For a moment, the entire car seemed to hold its breath. Lee Chae-woo was not a man people accused. Not directly, not safely. But Sandra's voice did not shake. Lee looked at her for a long time. Then he said, "You are right." That surprised her. He continued, "That is what men like me do." Sandra did not know what to say. "But not with you," he said. "Why?" "Because you would cut the rope." Her mouth almost moved. Not a smile. Not yet. "Damn right," she said softly. Lee's eyes warmed for half a second. "There she is." Sandra looked away. "Do not make me into a project." "I do not want a project." "Then what do you want?" Lee answered too quietly. "To understand why I keep noticing when you are tired." That landed somewhere neither expected. Sandra faced forward again. "That sounds like your problem, Mr. Lee. Yes, he said, it does. And strangely, he sounded almost relieved to have one. Minji disappeared from Lee's schedule for 8 days. Then she returned angry. Not openly, she was too polished for that. But anger lived in her posture, in the sharp tap of her heels, in the way she looked at Sandra, like a problem that still had not been solved. That night's event was at a private gallery near Samcheongdong. Snow fell softly over the old streets, turning rooftops white and making Seoul look kinder than it was. Sandra loved driving in snow. Other drivers became impatient. She became precise. Lee arrived with Minji beside him. The moment Minji entered the car, Sandra smelled trouble beneath the perfume. Lee was on a call, speaking in clipped Korean. Minji sat beside him, silent, too silent. Halfway to the gallery, Minji leaned forward. Sandra. Yes, ma'am. You're very far from home. Yes. It must be lonely. Lee's eyes lifted from his phone. Sandra answered evenly. Sometimes. Minji smiled. People in foreign countries should be careful. Accidents happen, misunderstandings, wrong places at wrong times. Sandra kept her gaze on the road. Yes, they do. Minji's smile widened, especially to people who forget they are temporary. Lee ended his call. The click was soft. The warning was not. Minji. She turned to him, innocent. What? Stop. I'm making conversation. No, Lee said. You are making a threat badly. Sandra almost coughed. Minji's face hardened. You humiliate me for her? Lee's voice was calm. You humiliate yourself. She is a driver. She is Sandra Williams. The way he said her full name changed the car. Sandra felt it in her chest. Minji heard it too. Her eyes glittered with rage. You don't even know her. Lee's gaze remained steady. I know she hears what others hide. I know she keeps discipline under insult. I know she protects passengers who would not protect her. I know she refuses gifts most people would beg for. I know she's afraid for her mother, and still arrives 12 minutes early. Sandra's hands tightened on the wheel. Lee continued, quieter. And I know she has more honor in silence than most people have in prayer. No one spoke. Snow struck the windshield and melted instantly. Minji looked from Lee to Sandra. Something broke behind her eyes. You're serious, she whispered. Lee did not answer. That was answer enough. The gallery appeared ahead, glowing warm against the snow. Sandra stopped at the entrance. The bodyguard opened Lee's door. He stepped out. Minji reached for her door. Lee looked back. You will go home. Her face drained. Lee Chuo. He turned fully. You are making a mistake, she said. Lee's voice became very soft. No. I made it when I allowed you near someone decent. Minji flinched. Lee looked at his guard. Escort Miss Seo to her car. Minji's eyes went to Sandra. You think he can protect you forever? Sandra opened her mouth. But Lee answered first. She does not need forever. His eyes were cold now. Only long enough for people like you to learn fear. Minji went still. The guard stepped closer. Lee leaned down slightly, voice low enough that only Minji and Sandra could hear. You will not speak her name. You will not ask about her family. You will not send anyone to frighten her. You will not breathe in her direction with bad intentions. Minji whispered. And if I do? Lee's face did not change. Then you will discover I have been kind to you. That was not loud. That was not theatrical. But Minji understood. So did Sandra. That was the moment Sandra realized Lee Chae-woo had not simply protected her. He had made her untouchable. And she did not know whether to be grateful or furious. Maybe both. After the gallery, Sandra drove Lee home alone. The snow had thickened. Seoul looked almost innocent beneath it, as if beauty could cover every cruel thing beneath the pavement. For 20 minutes, neither spoke. Then Sandra pulled into Lee's private residence in Hanam-dong. The gate closed behind them. She parked beneath the covered entrance, but did not unlock the doors. Lee waited. Sandra looked at him in the mirror. You had no right. His expression remained still. To stop a threat? To make me part of your world without asking? A pause. Then Lee nodded once. You are correct. I do not want people afraid to touch me because they are afraid of you. What do you want? I want to do my job. No. Her chin lifted. No? That is what you say when you want no one to look closer. Sandra's breath caught, but anger covered it. You don't know me well enough to say that. I know enough to know you hate needing anyone. Need has consequences. Yes, help has a price. Yes, protection becomes possession. Lee's face shifted. Pain. So brief, she almost missed it. Yes, he said quietly. It can. Then why would you put that on me? He looked away for the first time. Outside, snow slid from the hood of the car. When I was 12, Lee said, my father taught me how to survive powerful men. Sandra stayed silent. He said there are two kinds, men who hurt because they enjoy it, and men who hurt because they believe the world leads them no other tool. He looked back at her. For many years, I told myself I was the second kind. And now? Now I am not always sure. Sandra absorbed that. Lee Chae-woo did not confess. Men like him did not offer their inner weather to drivers in parked cars. Yet here he was, voice low, face bare enough to be dangerous. I protected you badly, he said. Sandra did not soften, but she listened. I saw someone aim at you, he continued, and I reacted as I am trained to react, by making them afraid. Yes, that is not recognition. No, he said. It is control. The honesty disarmed her more than any apology could have. He leaned forward slightly. You once said, this is not a rescue story. Sandra stilled. She had said that to herself, not to him. How did you? You speak to yourself when you think no one hears. Her face warmed. I said that out loud? Once, at the airport pickup. Sandra remembered. A bad day, a rude client, a private mutter near the trunk. This is not a rescue story, Sandra. Drive the car. Lee's mouth softened. I remembered. Why? Because I have never met someone so determined not to be saved. Her voice dropped. Because being saved usually means someone else gets to tell the story. Lee looked at her. And there it was, the thing between them. Not attraction only, not danger. Recognition. One person who survived by becoming unreadable, seeing another person who had done the same. Lee said, then tell it yourself. Sandra stared at him. What? Your story. Tell it yourself. I'm not interested in performing pain for you. I am not asking for pain. What are you asking for? The truth, whatever piece you choose. Sandra should have refused. She should have unlocked the doors, ended the night, gone home, made tea from Mappo, and called her mother. Instead, she looked at this dangerous man in the back seat and said, I learned Korean from a woman who died before I could bring her back here. Lee did not move. Mrs. Park, Sandra said. She lived next door. Her children sent money, but not time. She taught me grammar like it was warfare. A tiny smile touched Lee's face. She sounds Korean. She was very Korean. And you loved her. Sandra's throat tightened. Yes. Lee listened, like silence had become sacred. She used to say, language is a room, Sandra continued. If you learn it well enough, people can't lock you outside. Lee lowered his gaze briefly. She was right. I thought coming here would feel like honoring her. Does it? Sometimes. And other times? Sandra looked through the windshield at the falling snow. Other times I remember that speaking the language does not mean the room wants you inside. Lee's expression changed. Not pity, understanding. He said, then build your own room. Sandra almost laughed. With what money? With your skill. That sounds motivational and useless. This time he did smile. Barely, but real. Good. You dislike empty comfort. I dislike most comfort. I noticed. Of course you did. The silence after that was lighter. Not safe, but less armed. Lee reached for the door. Before leaving, he paused. Tomorrow, you will receive a revised contract. Sandra's eyes narrowed. No, you have not heard it. I heard enough. It is not money for your mother. Then what is it? Your company underpays bilingual security-certified drivers by 31% compared to private market rates. Sandra blinked. He continued, you are not charity, you are being exploited. That is between me and Han Global. I bought Han Global's parent company this afternoon. Sandra stared. You what? It was available. No. Milk is available. A company is negotiated. I negotiate quickly. Sandra closed her eyes. Oh my God. The revised contract will apply to every driver with language certification, not only you. That stopped her. What? You dislike special treatment. I dislike being owned. I know. So you bought my company? To change the pay structure. That is still absurd. Yes. You understand that sounds worse? Yes. Why would you do that? Lee looked at her through the open door. Because you were right, help as a rope is ownership. His voice lowered. So I removed the rope. Then he stepped out into the snow. Sandra sat there for a full minute after he entered the house. Then she said to the empty car, that man is going to be a problem. And for the first time in weeks, she smiled. The revised contract came the next morning. 31% pay increase, hazard compensation, language premium, late-night security bonus, medical emergency leave, applicable to 12 drivers, not one, all. Mr. Han looked both terrified and relieved. I don't know what you said to him, he told Sandra. I told him no. Mr. Han sighed. That seems to be dangerously effective. Sandra read the contract 3 times. Then she paid a Korean labor attorney to review it, because Sandra Williams never signed anything she did not understand. The attorney said, this is unusually favorable. Is there a trap? Not legally. That was not my question. The attorney paused. Socially, possibly. Sandra thanked her and signed. Because her mother needed surgery. Because 12 drivers needed fair pay. Because refusing help that did not cost her dignity would be pride, not strength. And Sandra knew the difference. Barely, but she knew. 3 weeks later, trouble came on a Friday night. It always did. Friday nights made people careless. Lee had a meeting near Incheon, at a port facility dressed up as a logistics office. Sandra disliked it immediately. Too many blind corners. Too few cameras. Security posted in the wrong places. She parked the Genesis facing out. A bodyguard noticed. You expect trouble? He asked in Korean. I expect exits, Sandra answered. He stared, then nodded. Lee noticed the exchange. Of course. He approached her window before going inside. You are uneasy. Yes. Why? Your security pattern is wrong. His eyes sharpened. How? 2 men at the front, none covering the East Service Road, cameras on the main gate only, and that gray van near the loading dock has been occupied for 17 minutes with no interior lights. Lee's chief guard, Jisoo, stepped closer. Sandra continued. Also, your meeting was moved here last minute by someone who knew you would accept because it involved port numbers. Jisoo looked at Lee. Lee looked at Sandra. You think it is a setup. I think someone wants you inside a building with poor exits. Jisoo said quietly. We can cancel. Lee's eyes stayed on Sandra. What would you do? She did not hesitate. Leave. A long pause. Then Lee nodded. We leave. Jisoo moved immediately, but the gray van's headlights turned on. Sandra's hand went to the gear shift. Lee opened the passenger door and got in. Not the back, the front. Sandra, he said. I know. The first shot hit the concrete pillar behind them. Sandra moved. The Genesis surged backward, tires screaming against wet pavement. Jisoo and 2 guards dove into the rear seats as Sandra cut the wheel and slammed into drive. Another shot cracked the side mirror. Lee's voice remained calm. East Road blocked. I see it. 2 vehicles approaching. I see them too. Jisoo shouted, main gate. No, Sandra snapped. That's where they want us. Lee looked at her. She cut left instead, toward a narrow service lane, barely wider than the car. Jisoo cursed. We won't fit. Sandra's eyes locked forward. We will if everyone stops talking. The car shot through the gap. Metal screamed along the side. A guard yelled. Sandra did not slow. A black SUV appeared ahead, blocking the lane. Lee reached inside his coat. Sandra barked, don't. His hand froze. If you fire through my windshield, she said, I will be extremely upset. For one impossible second, Lee looked amused. Then Sandra accelerated. Jisoo shouted her name. At the last possible moment, she jerked right, mounted the curb, clipped a stack of plastic barriers, and slid past the SUV with less than an inch to spare. The Genesis burst onto the outer road. Seatbelts, Sandra said. Lee looked at her. Now. He buckled. So did the men in back. Behind them, 2 vehicles followed. Sandra drove like Seoul had become a map under her skin. Left through an alley. Right past a warehouse. No highway. Too obvious. She took industrial roads, service tunnels, 1 illegal turn, and a delivery ramp that made Jisoo swear in 3 languages. Lee watched her with something close to awe. Not because she was fast, because she was controlled. No panic, no wasted movement, no dramatic breathing, just skill. At a red light near a market, she stopped. Everyone stared at her. Jisoo said, "Why are we stopping?" Sandra pointed. Cameras. The pursuing cars blew through the light. Traffic cameras flashed. Sandra waited 2 seconds, then turned calmly onto a side street. Lee's mouth curved. You wanted their plates captured. Yes. You are terrifying. I'm from Chicago. Jisoo, still gripping the handle above the door, muttered, What do they teach women in Chicago? Sandra glanced at him in the mirror. Not to die in men's drama. Lee laughed, harder than she had ever heard. It startled everyone, especially him. They reached Lee's residence 40 minutes later. Security descended. Doctors came. Police did not. Of course they did not. Sandra stepped out of the damaged Genesis and inspected the side panel. Scratched, dented, mirror gone, windshield cracked. She sighed. My supervisor is going to hate this paperwork. Jisoo stared at her. We were shot at. Yes, that will be in the paperwork. Lee approached slowly. His coat was torn near one shoulder. Blood darkened the fabric. Sandra's stomach dropped. You're hit. Grazed. You need a doctor. One is coming. One is already there. She pointed toward the house, where a medical team had arrived. Lee looked at her. You are ordering me now? Yes. His eyes warmed. Good. She hated how much that one word affected her. Inside, while doctors treated Lee, Sandra waited in the hall. She should have left. Her duty was complete. The passenger was alive. The vehicle was secured. The route was done. But she stayed. Not because he was a client, because Lee Chae-woo had looked at her during gunfire and trusted her hands on the wheel. Trust was dangerous. Trust made temporary things permanent. Jisoo approached with 2 cups of coffee. He offered one. Sandra took it. Thank you. He leaned against the wall beside her. You saved his life. I drove. You saved his life. She looked at him. Does he have many enemies? Jisoo snorted. He has breathing enemies and buried ones. Sandra's face went flat. I did not need that image. Sorry. No, you're not. No. They stood in silence. Then Jisoo said, People are calling you something now. I do not want to know. The American shield. Sandra closed her eyes. I hate that. It could be worse. How? They could call you his woman. Her eyes opened. Jisoo lifted both hands. I said could. Sandra's voice sharpened. I am nobody's woman. The treatment room door opened. Lee stood there, shirt collar open, bandage visible near his shoulder. I know, he said. Jisoo suddenly found somewhere else to be. Sandra faced Lee. You should be sitting down. You should be resting. I was not shot. You were targeted. They were targeting you. They missed. That is not funny. I was not joking. The quiet between them turned fragile. Sandra looked away first. I'm glad you're alive. Lee's expression changed, softened. Barely, but enough. So am I, he said. Mostly because you would be angry if I died in your car. I would be furious. I suspected. She almost smiled. He stepped closer. Not too close, he had learned. Tonight, people will talk, Lee said. People already talk. More now. I know. You will be safer if I publicly claim responsibility for your protection. Sandra's face hardened. No. Listen first. No. His jaw tightened. Sandra. No, Lee. It was the first time she used his name without formality. Both of them felt it. She continued. You do not get to make me untouchable by making me yours. His eyes darkened. That is not what I meant. It is what people will hear. They already fear touching you. Because of you. Yes. Then undo it. I cannot. At least don't make it worse. He was silent. Sandra's voice softened, but only slightly. I am grateful you stopped, Minji. I am grateful you changed the contracts. I am grateful you respect my boundaries. Most of the time. Most? You bought a company. Fair. But I need you to understand something. She held his gaze. Recognition is not ownership. Protection is not permission. And affection does not give you the right to decide my life faster than I can breathe. Lee absorbed every word, then he nodded. You are right. Again, that honesty. Again, that dangerous willingness to learn. He said, tell me what safety looks like to you. Sandra stared. No one had ever asked her that. Not like that. Not without already deciding the answer. Finally, she said, options. Lee's brow shifted. Explain. Safety is having options. Money I earned. Doors I can open myself. Routes I chose. People who help without trapping me. The ability to say yes because I can also say no. Lee looked at her like she had handed him a language he had never mastered. Then he said quietly, then I will give you options. No. He stopped. Sandra corrected herself. You will not give them. You will make room for them. A slow breath left him. Yes, that was the first promise Lee Chae-woo made to Sandra Williams that did not sound like power. It sounded like learning. 3 months later, Sandra Williams was no longer employed by Han Global Mobility. She resigned properly, with notice, with documentation, with every bonus paid. Then she opened Williams Route Consulting, not a driving service, a transport risk mapping firm, corporate routes, executive movement planning, language-aware security protocol, emergency exit mapping, driver training. She built it from a rented office smaller than her first Seoul apartment, with 1 assistant, 2 laptops, and a wall map covered in colored pins. Her first client was not Lee. She refused. He accepted. Grudgingly. Her first client was a women-led medical technology firm with international guests and no security plan beyond use nice cars. Her second client was an embassy subcontractor. Her third was Han Global, forced by new leadership to improve driver safety training. Lee became her fourth. At market rate, triple deposit, no favors. When he saw the invoice, he called her. This is expensive, he said. Sandra leaned back in her office chair. You can afford it. You charged me more than the embassy. You are more difficult than the embassy. A pause, then his low laugh. Fair. Her mother's surgery was scheduled for early spring. Sandra flew home to Chicago for 12 days. Lee did not offer his plane. He did not send money. He did not appear dramatically at the airport. Instead, 2 days before her flight, a small paper bag from Mappo appeared outside her office door. Yuja Cha and a note, his first. Only 6 words. For your mother, if she likes it. Sandra stared at the note for a long time. Then she folded it carefully and put it in her wallet. Chicago felt louder than Sandra remembered. The highways were wider, the air was warmer. The voices were familiar in a way that made her chest ache. Her mother survived the surgery. Recovery was slow, painful, real, but she survived. On the last night in Chicago, Sandra sat beside her mother's bed, watching her sleep, and thought about Mrs. Park, Seoul, snow, traffic, danger, and a man who was trying, awkwardly, imperfectly, but sincerely, not to turn love into control. Her mother opened one eye. "You thinking loud?" Sandra smiled. "Go to sleep." "Is it that man?" Sandra froze. Her mother's eye opened wider. There is no man. Sandra, there is a complicated man. That sounds like a man. He's dangerous. So are you when hungry. Mama, does he respect you? Sandra looked down. Yes. Does he listen when you say no? She thought about it. Yes. Does he make you smaller? Sandra's throat tightened. No. Her mother closed her eyes again. Then don't punish yourself because love found you wearing work clothes. Sandra sat very still. Her mother drifted back to sleep. And Sandra realized she had spent so long refusing rescue that she had almost refused recognition too. When Sandra returned to Seoul, Lee was waiting outside her office, not in the lobby, not upstairs, outside, in the cold. No guards close enough to crowd her doorway, no dramatic flowers, no performance. Just Lee Chae-woo in a black coat, holding 2 paper cups of coffee, like a man unsure whether coffee counted as pressure. Sandra stepped out of the taxi with her suitcase. "You're standing on my sidewalk," she said. "I suspected you would dislike me waiting inside." "You suspected correctly." He looked at her suitcase. "How is your mother?" "Recovering." "I'm glad." She liked the tea. Something gentle moved through his face. "I'm glad about that too." Sandra unlocked the office door, then paused. "You want to come in?" "I do." "Are you going to behave?" "Probably not perfectly. At least you're honest." They went inside. Her office was cold. She turned on the lights. The wall mat glowed under fluorescent brightness. Lee stood before it, studying the pins, the handwritten notes, the route layers. "This is impressive," he said. "It's mine." He looked at her. "Yes," he said. "It is." That mattered. More than praise, more than money, more than protection. He saw the ownership and did not try to take it. Sandra removed her coat. "Lee." His attention sharpened at her tone. "I need to say something." He turned fully. She took a breath. "I am not easy. I know. I overthink exits. Yes. I disappear when overwhelmed. I noticed. I hate being cornered. I learned. I will not belong to you." His voice was quiet. "I do not want you to belong to me." She searched his face. "What do you want?" Lee Chae-woo, the most feared man in 3 countries, looked at Sandra Williams like fear had finally met something stronger. "I want to be someone you choose," he said. "No demand, no possession, no rescue. Just the truth." Sandra's heart moved carefully, like an animal approaching an open hand. "And if I don't?" His answer came without hesitation. "Then I will still be grateful I knew you." That was the moment she believed him. Not completely. Sandra was not foolish, but enough. Enough to step closer. Enough to take one of the coffees from his hand. Enough to say, "You can start by helping me put these new route files in order." Lee blinked. "That is not romantic." "No," Sandra said. "It's useful." His mouth curved. "I can be useful. We'll see." They worked for 2 hours. The mafia boss and the woman who had once been his driver. He placed pins where she told him. She corrected his handwriting twice. He accepted both corrections with dignity. Mostly. At one point, he reached across the desk for a file, and his hand brushed hers. They both stopped. No music swelled. No confession broke the room open. Just silence. The good kind. The kind that did not erase her. The kind that made room. Sandra looked at him. Lee looked back. And softly in Korean, she said, 천천히. Slowly. His voice answered just as softly. 그래, 천천히. Yes, slowly. Outside, Seoul kept moving. Cruel, beautiful, unforgiving, alive. But inside that small office, Sandra Williams stood in a room she had built herself. Not rescued, not claimed, not owned, recognized. And Lee Chae-woo, who had spent his life making people afraid to touch what mattered to him, finally understood that love was not making someone untouchable. It was becoming someone safe enough to be touched by choice. Sandra looked back at the map. There's traffic near Mapo, she said. Lee picked up a red pin. Then we changed the route. She smiled. Yes, she said, we do. Sandra Williams did not become powerful because Lee Chae-woo noticed her. She was already powerful. He simply became quiet enough to see it. That was the difference between possession and love. Possession says, I will protect you because you are mine. Love says, I will stand beside you while you remain yours. And in a city that had tried to make her invisible, Sandra Williams did not need a man to give her a place. She built one. She named it. She locked the door herself. And when she finally opened it, Lee Chae-woo understood the honor. He had not rescued her. He had been allowed inside. Thanks for being here. If you haven't subscribed, please do so now. Remember, sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is stop. Look and listen. Love is all around. You never know whose heart you might steal. See you in the next episode.